They never text first. Days pass, weeks, maybe. And you're always the one reaching out, always the one carrying the weight of the connection. You tell yourself it doesn't matter, that maybe they're just busy, that they'll come around. But deep inside, something doesn't feel right. If you've ever been in that position, checking your phone, second-guessing your worth, wondering if you're overthinking it, this video is for you. Because today we're not just going to vent, we're going to understand, we're going to decode what it really means when someone never initiates contact. And more importantly, what you should do about it. Not from a place of weakness, but from a place of power, clarity, and deep self-respect. This is the everlasting Stoic. Here we don't chase attention, we cultivate presence. We don't beg for affection. We grow in silence until we radiate value so strong it speaks for us. If you're serious about becoming emotionally untouchable, about understanding the Stoic path in relationships, and about never again feeling that hollow tug of waiting for a message that may never come, then stay with me until the end. Like the video, subscribe to the channel and prepare yourself for a shift in perspective. Because once you see this clearly, you never go back to chasing again. 1. Observe without judgment. Before you react, before you spiral into frustration, anxiety, or overanalysis, pause. The first and most powerful Stoic principle you must internalize in this situation is simple: observation without judgment. When someone doesn't text you first, your mind rushes to fill in the blanks. They must not care. They're pulling away. Maybe I said something wrong. Maybe I'm just not enough. That inner voice, that commentary, it's loud, emotional, and very often wrong. Marcus Aurelius said, "If you are pained by any external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it." And when it comes to modern communication, that couldn't be more accurate. You see, most people are addicted to interpretation. Every lack of a message becomes an insult. Every silence, an accusation. But the reality is, you don't know why they haven't reached out. Maybe they're overwhelmed. Maybe they're shy. Maybe they don't feel the same. Maybe they're playing a game. Or maybe they're just not thinking about it at all. Your job isn't to become a mind reader. Your job is to be the observer, not the judge. You must learn to see things as they are, not as your insecurities color them. This does not mean you become passive. It does not mean you accept poor treatment. It means you start from the clearest position of power, reality. Here's what observing without judgment looks like in practice. You notice, they haven't texted me first in over a week. You do not add, therefore I must not matter. Instead, you say, interesting, this is data. Let me continue to observe. This detachment isn't cold, it's mature. It keeps you from self-sabotaging, from sending panicked messages, from clinging harder out of fear. It gives you time to assess, to reflect, and to choose your response instead of reacting blindly. Think of it like a fire. When someone doesn't text first, your emotions want to throw gasoline. But the Stoic throws space, stillness, air. And in that air, clarity. Eventually, a pattern will emerge. And when you've seen it enough times, calmly, without personal interpretation, you'll be able to act, not from resentment, but from awareness. Let me ask you this. Can you remember a time when jumping to conclusions made something worse? When assuming ill intent made you spiral, only to find out later there was a reasonable explanation? In the comments, share a time you learned something valuable by stepping back instead of lashing out. What did you see when you stopped judging and started observing? Your story could help someone else make the same shift. Your clarity could become someone else's calm. 2. Reconsider your standards. Once you've created the space to observe without immediate judgment, the next step is to ask yourself a brutally honest question. What am I accepting? Because every time you initiate the conversation, every time you send the first message, the first meme, the check-in text, and they never do, you're telling yourself a silent story. That story might go something like this. It's okay if I always reach out. I don't mind. I understand they're busy. I'm patient. But underneath those justifications lies a quiet compromise. You are lowering your standard for emotional reciprocity. You're allowing a dynamic that, if you're truly honest, leaves you unfulfilled. Now hear me clearly. Stoicism does not mean becoming rigid or unforgiving. It's not about setting arbitrary rules, like they must always text first, or else I'll cut them off. That's not strength. That's insecurity masquerading as boundaries. What it does mean is this: you must clearly know what kind of energy you are available for. Are you okay with a relationship, romantic or platonic, where connection is one-sided, where the effort flows in only one direction, where your presence feels optional rather than valued? And if the answer is no, why are you still accepting it? Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." The same goes for emotional investment. It's not that relationships are too complicated. It's that we waste so much time in patterns that drain us. Reconsidering your standards means sitting down with yourself and saying, what kind of behavior reflects mutual respect? What kind of energy do I want to build my life around? Here's a truth many avoid. Some people simply don't have the capacity to meet you at your level. Not because they're bad, but because they're distracted, immature, self-centered, avoidant, or on a different wavelength altogether. When you adjust to meet them where they are, you shrink yourself. When you raise your standards and expect reciprocity, you filter who gets close. That's not selfish. That's sane. Take a moment now and reflect. In the relationships where you feel most drained, how often are you the one initiating connection? How often are you holding space that the other person never steps into? It's time to write a new personal policy. Not out of anger, not out of entitlement, but out of self-respect. I no longer chase energy that doesn't recognize mine. If you're ready to commit to that principle, even just as an experiment, say it in the comments, affirm it. Let others see your shift, because every time someone reclaims their standard, it gives the rest of us permission to do the same. 3. Don't make it personal. It's one of the hardest things to do when you feel unseen. To not take it personally. When someone doesn't text back. When the energy you give is not returned. When silence echoes louder than any spoken word. Your mind will do everything in its power to convince you that it must be about you. Maybe I'm too much. Maybe I'm not enough. Maybe I'm boring. Maybe I said something wrong. Maybe I'm not attractive enough, successful enough, clever enough. Maybe I'm just not worth it. This spiral is familiar and poisonous. Here's the reality most people never internalize. What someone else does is a reflection of them. How you interpret it is a reflection of you. Now let's not sugarcoat this. If someone consistently ignores your presence, fails to meet your energy, and makes no effort to connect, that tells you something. But what it tells you is not a personal attack. It's simply information, and your power lies in how you respond, not in what you absorb. Taking things personally is one of the ego's favorite traps. It centers everything around you. It turns the external world into a mirror of your own fears. And worst of all, it inflates your sense of control. Think about that. When you take it personally that someone doesn't reach out, what you're actually saying on a deeper level is, if I were better, they would act differently. But that's an illusion. You're not that powerful, and you shouldn't be. People are who they are. They show up or they don't. They care or they don't. And often their actions are driven by their own wounds, their own distractions, their own immaturity, or even their own version of avoidance. Let me offer you this. What if it was never about you? What if their silence is just their silence? What if their lack of effort reflects their own capacity, their own values, their own upbringing? What if their inconsistency is not a verdict on your worth, but simply a signpost directing you to higher ground? Epictetus taught that we should only concern ourselves with what is within our control. Your thoughts, your words, your actions, that's it. Everything else, including how others behave, is outside your control, and therefore should never be allowed to dictate your emotional weather. But we're human. We want to be liked. We want to be pursued. And so when someone doesn't reciprocate that desire, we interpret it as rejection, as proof of our inadequacy. This is where Stoicism becomes more than just a philosophy. It becomes a shield. It teaches you that your value is not on trial every time someone disappoints you. That your worth is not something others hand you with affection or take away with indifference. It is something you own, something you cultivate, something unshakable, because it is internal, not outsourced. So next time they don't text you first, next time they leave you on read, next time the silence creeps in, whispering doubts into your mind, remember this: it's not about you, and even if it was, you still get to choose how you respond. And if you're someone who's taken things personally your entire life, if you've tied your value to how much others show up, then maybe today is a turning point. In the comments, I want you to affirm something not just to me but to yourself. Their silence does not define me. My value is mine alone. Say it. Own it. Let others see it. Because the moment you stop making it personal is the moment you begin reclaiming your peace. 4. Match their effort. Here's where things get uncomfortable. Because this chapter forces you to act, not just reflect. So far, we've talked about observing. We've talked about standards. We've talked about detaching your self-worth from other people's behavior. Now comes the next evolution. Match their effort. This doesn't mean playing games. This isn't tit for tat. It's not, well, they ignored me, so I'll ignore them. That's petty. That's reactive. That's insecure. Matching effort is not a punishment. It's a principle. And that principle is this: I will not overextend myself for someone who underinvests in me. Look around at your life. How many connections, romantic, friendly, familial, do you carry on your back? How many conversations exist solely because you initiated them? How many people do you check in on regularly, who rarely, if ever, check in on you? That imbalance becomes the silent architect of resentment. It builds slowly, quietly, until one day you realize that you are exhausted, not by people, but by your own inability to let go of one-sided bonds. Now, matching effort isn't about withdrawing love. It's about withdrawing excess. It's about recalibrating your energy to reflect the reality of the dynamic. If someone never texts you first and you continue texting them, you are training them. You are teaching them that your presence is uncontinue texting them. You are training them. You are teaching them that your presence is unconditional, even in the absence of effort. And over time, they may begin to take it for granted, not because they're malicious, but because human beings adapt to pattern. So what do? You slow down, you create space, you let them feel the silence, not to manipulate, but to reveal. When you stop initiating, you allow reality to speak. You see who actually reaches out when you no longer chase. You see who misses your presence when you no longer throw it at their feet. It's uncomfortable. It requires restraint. It may lead to disconnection, but it also leads to truth, and that truth sets you free from illusion. Matching effort is about alignment. It's about saying, if you value this connection, you'll show up for it. If not, I won't force it. And in that posture, you reclaim your dignity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." In this case, don't argue with yourself about what's fair or kind or understanding. Be someone who reflects the energy you receive and gives generously only where it's reciprocated. A relationship of any kind cannot be carried by one person's will alone. It needs two hands to hold it, two hearts to feed it, two minds to show up, again and again. Now, here's your challenge. Look at your relationships this week. Don't change anything. Just observe. Who reaches out without being prompted? Who initiates connection? Who returns your energy? And then, begin to align. Not with anger, not with drama, but with peace. If you're ready to stop chasing what isn't chasing you, if you're ready to let silence speak louder than excuses, then write this in the comments. I honor effort, not promises, because anyone can say they care. But the only truth that matters is how they show up. 5. Double down on growth. There comes a point where you must redirect all the energy you've spent waiting, hoping, analyzing, and reclaim it, reinvest it, channel it into the one thing no one can ever deprive you of: your personal growth. You've spent enough time wondering why they never text first. Enough time trying to decode their silences. Enough time staring at your phone, calculating whether to wait another hour or another day before reaching out again. That mental real estate is not free. It costs you clarity. It costs you presence. It drains the quiet resolve you could have spent building yourself. The Stoics knew this. When the world fails to give you what you want, when love feels distant, when people seem indifferent, when recognition never arrives, the answer is never to beg harder. It's to double down on growth. Let me ask you something. What if you took every ounce of energy you've spent worrying about their attention and turned it inward? Not in self-criticism, but in self-construction. What if the goal shifted from, how can I make them want me, to how can I become someone even I admire? That's not arrogance. That's alignment, and it's far more attractive than chasing. Here's the Stoic model of transformation. When something outside your control begins to disturb your peace, the signal is not to fix the external. It's to fortify the internal. That's your sovereign ground. So, what does doubling down on growth look like? In practice, it's waking up earlier, not to win some productivity contest, but to reclaim your time from distraction. It's hitting the gym, not out of insecurity, but out of devotion to discipline and strength. It's reading daily, philosophy, history, psychology. Not for empty knowledge, but to shape your thoughts into something solid, refined, purposeful. It's auditing your diet, your habits, your circle, because you recognize that the environment you build is a mirror of the standards you accept. It's setting goals, not because you need to prove anything to anyone, but because the act of becoming is the most noble rebellion against a world that wants you small, reactive, emotionally dependent. And here's what happens when you do this. The silence that once hurt now becomes sanctuary. You begin to enjoy your own presence so deeply that someone else's absence stops feeling like a punishment. When you're building, silence is not empty, it's sacred. Every unanswered text is not a rejection, it's a clearing. A signal, a redirect, an opening for something better or someone better. Even if that better is just a stronger, clearer, more grounded you. Marcus Aurelius put it simply: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. So if their lack of effort bothers you, use it. Let it be the spark that ignites a deeper self-investment. This isn't about pretending you don't care. It's about maturing to a place where your care no longer comes at the cost of your dignity. So I'll challenge you now, for the next 30 days, make it your quiet mission to grow. Not for revenge, not for validation, but for alignment. Build your body, sharpen your mind, calm your emotions, raise your standards, elevate your routine. And most of all, observe what happens when you no longer beg for connection, because you're too busy connecting with purpose. And if you're ready to accept that challenge, if you're done shrinking to fit into someone's indifference, say this in the comments: I choose growth over validation. Let others know you're in this phase of your life. Speak it, commit to it, and most of all, live it. 6. Have the conversation. If it matters. If it matters. Now, let's be honest, there's a part of you that doesn't want to walk away. A part of you still holds out hope. A part that believes, if I just say the right thing, they'll understand. If I explain how I feel, they'll change. If I show them I care, maybe they'll start caring back. That voice is not weakness. That voice is human. But here's the Stoics' discipline. You don't silence the voice. You face it with reason. So if this connection truly matters to you, if this isn't just another short-lived crush or casual interest, if it has real emotional weight, history, or potential, then don't just fade into silence. Don't play the ghost. Don't suppress your truth while secretly wishing they'd figure it out. Instead, have the conversation. But, and this is key, have it from strength, not from neediness. There is a profound difference between saying, "Why don't you text me first? Don't you care?" versus, "I've noticed a consistent pattern where I initiate most of our conversations. That's not sustainable for me long term." The first approach seeks approval. The second seeks clarity. And clarity is your ally. You owe it to yourself and to them to speak directly without drama, without guilt-tripping, without expectation of immediate change. You speak your truth, and then you watch, because their response will tell you everything. If they get defensive, dodge accountability, or blame you for being too much, then you've gained the most valuable thing of all: evidence. Evidence that your emotional maturity outpaces theirs. Evidence that this bond was never built on mutual respect. Evidence that it's time to move on, not in anger, but in evolution. But if they respond with presence, with humility, with real effort, then you've just opened the door to a better dynamic. Not because you forced them to care, but because you gave the relationship a chance to rise to your standard. The Stoics weren't cold, they were clear. They believed in dialogue, in speaking plainly, but wisely, in engaging with others from a position of inner stability, not emotional volatility. Seneca wrote, "A sword never kills anybody. It is a tool in the killer's hand. Words are the same. They can wound or they can awaken. It depends on how you wield them." So here's your responsibility. If someone's behavior has left you confused, hurt, or unvalued, and the connection is important enough to salvage, then speak. Tell them what you see. Tell them what you feel. And most importantly, tell them what you need going forward. This isn't a demand. It's a declaration. You're not asking for a favor. You're defining a boundary, and whether they rise to meet it or not is up to them. But you, at least, will walk away with your integrity intact. That matters more than a reply. It matters more than a temporary fix. It matters more than someone texting you first just because they feel guilty. What you want is not a gesture. You want alignment. You want energy that flows both ways. Effort that doesn't require prompting. Connection that breathes on its own. Not one you must resuscitate every week. So if you're hesitating, if you've gone silent out of fear, rather than peace, consider this your call to clarity. Have the conversation. Speak like someone who respects their own time. Speak like someone who is not afraid of losing what's not truly theirs. And if you've ever had that moment where you finally said what you were holding in, and the result gave you freedom, even if it wasn't what you hoped for, share it in the comments. Let others learn from your courage. Because sometimes speaking your truth doesn't fix the relationship. It just frees you from the illusion. And that is a victory worth claiming. 7. Shift to abundance thinking. So far, we've dissected your emotional patterns, confronted uncomfortable truths, and invited realignment. But none of it will stick. Not the observations, not the boundaries, not even your efforts to grow, unless you confront the hidden mindset quietly driving your behavior. Scarcity. When someone never texts you first, and yet you keep holding on, you're often not just holding on to them. You're holding on to the belief that they're your only option. Or worse, your best option. That there won't be someone else who gets you the same way. That you might not find someone who fits your niche personality, your quirks, your rhythms. That this connection, though hollow, is better than solitude. That some love, even if unreciprocated, is better than no love at all. This is the deception of scarcity. It narrows your vision. It conditions your nervous system to accept less, just because you believe more may never arrive. But a Stoic sees the truth. Scarcity is often self-created. You become scarce when you stop expanding, when you stop investing in new experiences, when you isolate, when you stay mentally locked onto one person's behavior, when your world shrinks to a single screen, a single text thread, a single name in your heart that dictates your emotional weather. Here's what abundance thinking looks like. Not in the cliché, surface level, just think positive way, but in grounded Stoic reality. Abundance is knowing that relationships are not rare. They're just misaligned when you don't know yourself. Abundance is recognizing that connection is not a fluke. It's a skill. You can refine how you communicate, how you present yourself, how you show up energetically, and better results will follow. Abundance is remembering that your value does not drop when someone else fails to see it. The sun is not dimmed by a blind man's eyes, and your worth is not validated by responses. It is revealed in how you carry yourself in silence. When you stop seeing one person's lack of effort as a statement about your entire romantic future, you begin to breathe differently. You start acting differently. You text differently. You no longer approach every interaction like it's a test of your adequacy. You no longer ask the universe, am I enough, because you already answered that for yourself. And yes, I know. It's hard. It's hard when you've grown attached to a specific outcome, when you've visualized a future, when you've felt chemistry, even if it's one-sided. But that pain is the tax of growth. It's the spiritual fee you pay when leaving behind small thinking. And trust me, the dividend of abundance is priceless. When you live from abundance, you are no longer afraid of losing someone who doesn't value you, because your identity isn't built around keeping others. It's built around being someone worth keeping, whether they recognize it or not. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. So ask yourself, what kind of internal economy are you living in? Do you see your future through the lens of depletion or expansion? Do you believe there's a tribe, a partner, a space where you are naturally received? Or have you convinced yourself that what you've got, even if one-sided, is all you'll ever have? Let me offer you this exercise. For 1 week, every time you feel that sting, that hollow ache of why haven't they reached out, pause. Don't chase. Don't overthink. Instead, add something. Anything. Add to your life. Add to your knowledge. Add to your health. Add to your circle. Add to your habits. Add to your depth. And as you add, abundance builds. If you're ready to break the mental chains of scarcity, if you're ready to live as if you are not afraid of love leaving, but confident in love arriving, then speak this into the comments. I release scarcity. I choose expansion. Say it. Believe it. Build the life that makes that statement real. 8. Respect yourself with boundaries. Let's talk about one of the most misunderstood and most vital tools of inner strength: boundaries. Not ultimatums. Not emotional landmines. Not manipulations cloaked as expectations. But true, firm, quietly powerful boundaries, rooted in self-respect. When someone never texts you first, when the imbalance becomes clear, when you're doing all the reaching and they do all the receiving, then it is time to ask, where is the line? The line that protects your peace. The line that safeguards your dignity. The line that says, this is how I treat myself. And if you cannot meet me here, I will not shrink to meet you where I no longer belong. Boundaries are not built from anger. They are built from clarity. And clarity is painful but liberating. Here's a truth many avoid. If you don't set boundaries, you will slowly begin to resent people for things you never told them were unacceptable. And that's not their fault. That's yours. You taught them silently how to treat you. You answered every late-night message. You initiated every conversation. You accepted ghosting, breadcrumbing, last-minute plans, vague commitments, and one-sided emotional labor. And when you accept something long enough, it becomes normal. Not just to them, but to you. But it's not normal. It's a signal, a test. And now, it's time to choose differently. So what does a boundary look like in this case? It might be internal. You decide, I will no longer initiate contact with someone who does not meet me halfway. I will no longer emotionally invest in a dynamic where I do all the labor. It might be external. You say, I've noticed I initiate most of our conversations. That's starting to feel unbalanced for me. I value reciprocity, and I need to see that from people in my life. And yes, that might trigger distance. That might even end the connection. But that is the cost of clarity, and it's a cost worth paying. Because what you're doing is far deeper than managing one relationship. You're training the world in how to engage with your energy. You are saying, this is sacred. This is not up for negotiation. This is my standard, not my suggestion. The Stoics were not permissive. They were precise. They didn't go around throwing their peace into the hands of anyone who smiled their way. They moved deliberately. They chose associations carefully. And they let go gracefully when others did not align. Boundaries are not about building walls. They're about building filters. They don't keep the world out. They keep the wrong energy out, so the right energy can breathe. And here's the real win. When you set a boundary and follow through on it, something profound happens within you. Your self-respect multiplies. Your self-trust grows. You no longer wonder, am I asking for too much? Because you realize, I am finally asking for just enough. You are no longer emotionally enslaved by people who don't even know the weight you carry. You are no longer silently suffering under the illusion that love must come with confusion. No. From here forward, love and connection and friendship must come with respect. So if someone can't meet you in effort, let your silence meet them in consequence. And if they return, they'll know what it means to approach you with care. And if they don't, you've just cleared space for something real. If this is the first time in your life you're ready to enforce boundaries, not as a tactic but as a philosophy, then say this in the comments. I protect my peace with principle. Let that be your compass. Let it guide how you move. And never again confuse tolerance with self-respect. 9. Let go of control. You've analyzed the patterns. You've raised your standards. You've pulled back, grown stronger, clarified what you want, even drawn the line. And yet, something still lingers. Doesn't it? That subtle, quiet tension in your chest. That mental itch that won't quite settle. It's the desire for control. The silent hope that, if you just say the right thing, if you just wait the right number of days, if you show them you're not fazed, or if you withdraw just enough, they'll finally chase, finally apologize, finally text you first, and affirm everything you wished they'd say from the beginning. That hope is natural. But if left unchecked, it becomes your cage. Here's what you must confront now. Control is the final illusion. As long as you are still trying to control the outcome, even through subtle manipulation, through strategic silence, through planned indifference, you are still bound to the dynamic. You are not free. You are just playing the game from a different angle. The Stoics taught us this with relentless clarity. The only control we ever truly possess is over our own mind. Our thoughts, our choices, our responses. Everything else, how others think, feel, behave, show up, or don't, is outside the gate. But the ego resists this. The ego wants control. It fears uncertainty more than anything. It says, I just need closure. I just want an answer. I just need to know why. But often these aren't honest needs. They are strategies. Hidden bids to regain influence. Secret attempts to steer someone else's emotional wheel. And that is not Stoicism. That is entanglement. You know you're still caught in this trap when you're doing all the right things, growing, setting boundaries, holding silence, but deep inside you're still waiting for a reaction. You send no text, but you hope. You move forward, but you check your phone. You speak your truth. But in the back of your mind, you're watching the door. You've grown, but you haven't released. Let me be very clear. True peace doesn't come from winning. It comes from letting go of the need to win. That person may never realize what they missed. They may never change. They may never text first. Not tomorrow. Not next week. Not ever. And you must be okay with that. Because your value is not measured by their realization. It is measured by your willingness to detach from what you cannot influence. This is hard. Incredibly hard. Especially when you've invested time, emotions, memories. When your mind plays the highlight reel of your best moments. When your heart clings to the hope of potential. Of what could have been, if only. But Stoicism doesn't concern itself with what could have been. It concerns itself with what is. What is right now is a dynamic in which you are doing all the work. What is right now is someone showing you, through repeated behavior. That effort is one-sided. What is right now is your growing strength, your rising clarity, your increasing ability to make peace with absence instead of chasing it. So here is your task. Abandon the strategy. Stop trying to engineer their response. You do not need to send one more perfect message. You do not need to calibrate your distance, your timing, your presence, like some emotional algorithm. You simply need to be still and let what is. The freedom you're seeking will never come from their reply. It comes from your release. Seneca said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Mastery in this context means surrendering the fantasy of control, not in weakness, but in wisdom. It means recognizing that your peace begins the moment you stop waiting for their behavior to change and start changing your relationship with attachment. If this speaks to you, if you know you've been carrying the silent burden of needing an outcome, then share this in the comments. I release the illusion of control. Say it not for them, but for you. Say it, then act like it. Let your peace be your posture. And walk forward, not waiting, not hoping, but free. 10. Be ready to exit the cycle. By now, you've faced the discomfort. You've wrestled with truth. You've peeled back the emotional layers and found your voice, your strength, your standards. But there's one final step, and it's the one most people resist. Not because it's the most painful, but because it's the most final. Exiting the cycle. This dynamic where you always text first, always give more, always overextend, always hope, is not just a pattern. It's a cycle, a loop, a behavioral orbit that you've probably played out not just with this person, but in other relationships too. Different names, same pain, different faces, same imbalance. And the longer you stay in this loop, the more it erodes your confidence, your joy, your time, and your spiritual energy. The Stoics didn't believe in clinging to what no longer served them. They believed in living in harmony with nature, which means accepting reality, not resisting it. And the reality is this: sometimes the only way to protect your peace is to walk away. No fanfare, no announcement, no bitterness, just a quiet exit. Because when you've spoken your truth, observed the pattern, honored your standards, and still see no change, then it's not stubborn to leave. It's self-respect. But leaving a cycle isn't just about cutting someone off. It's about breaking the internal pattern that kept you tied to them in the first place. You have to ask yourself, why did I hold on so long? Was it fear of being alone? Was it the egoic desire to make it work? Was it nostalgia? Was it the belief that love requires suffering, chasing, fixing? Until you answer these questions honestly, you may leave the person but not the pattern. And that's what must change. To exit the cycle means you no longer take breadcrumbs and call it connection. You no longer measure your worth through someone else's inconsistency. You no longer wait for people to change when their actions have already spoken. To exit the cycle means you stop fantasizing about potential and start honoring reality. It means you close the door, not out of hate, but because peace lives on the other side of goodbye. Marcus Aurelius reminds us, everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. But repeated behavior, that is truth. And when you see it clearly, when you accept that someone's pattern is not momentary but habitual, you must act, or suffer the slow erosion of your soul. Here's what happens when you exit the cycle. At first, it hurts. It feels like failure. But then, clarity sets in. You start feeling lighter. You begin noticing how much energy you spent trying to sustain what was never sustainable. You reclaim your mornings, your mental space, your dignity. And eventually, you don't just move on, you evolve. That's the power of the exit. It's not an ending. It's a beginning. One that you author with intention, not fear. So if you're still holding on, still watching their silence, still checking for signs, even now, then ask yourself one last question. How much longer are you willing to live like this? And if your answer is no more, then act like it. Because cycles don't break when you want them to. They break when you refuse to repeat them. And if today is that day for you, then say this in the comments. This cycle ends with me. Let it be known. Not for them. Not even for validation. But for yourself. So that you never again forget what it feels like to choose peace over potential. Conclusion. And now we've reached the end. If you've stayed with me this far, it means something in this message struck a chord. Maybe the silence has become too loud. Maybe the imbalance too obvious. Maybe you've grown too weary from waiting, hoping, checking, giving. You came here wondering what to do when they never text first. And the answer, as you've seen, isn't about strategy. It's not about playing hard to get, or sending the perfect message, or timing your responses with surgical precision. The answer is about you. It's about observing without judgment. So you stop projecting stories where there is only behavior. It's about reconsidering your standards, not to punish others, but to realign with your worth. It's about not taking it personally, because someone's inability to reciprocate is not your failure. It's their limit. It's about matching effort, not to keep score, but to preserve your peace. It's about growing, not as a distraction, but as a declaration of sovereignty. It's about having the conversation when it matters with clarity, not need. It's about abandoning scarcity and embracing abundance. It's about setting boundaries that honor your energy and letting go of the illusion that you can control anyone else's desire to stay. And finally, it's about exiting the cycle, not because you gave up, but because you finally woke up. There's dignity in letting go. There's power in detachment. There's wisdom in silence. Not when it's used to punish, but when it's chosen to protect. Now I want to leave you with this final reflection. If you knew without a doubt that the connection you dream of is ahead of you, not behind you, how differently would you act? Would you chase less? Would you wait less? Would you shrink less? And would you grow more, love clearer, speak stronger, live freer? If your answer is yes, then let this video be the turning point. Let it be the moment where you stop auditioning for roles in other people's lives and start authoring your own. Now, if you found something here that resonated, drop your reflections in the comments. Don't just say great video. Tell me, what part of this did you need to hear today? Or better yet, leave behind a single sentence that declares the shift you're ready to make. Not for me, not for views, for you. Because you never know who might read it and realize they're not alone in this moment either. If this message helped you, subscribe to the Everlasting Stoic. This is only the beginning. Here, we don't chase affection. We cultivate presence. We don't play games. We play for growth. So until next time, hold your standard, protect your energy, and above all, never forget, you are not hard to love. You're just not built for people who love halfway. Keep walking. The right ones don't need to be chased. They just arrive in their time. And when they do, you'll be ready.